So that just answered one of my questions for Lucia as to whether or not we're recording this meeting. So good afternoon, everyone. This is Connie Burke speaking, Associate Commissioner for Data Management Research and Planning. I'm joined by a number of folks who are part of the DMRP team. I'm not going to do broad introductions because hopefully you know who we are, but I do want to pivot to a fellow Associate Commissioner who's on the call, Debbie Davis, to do her introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Friday update meeting. And as Connie said, some of us have a long weekend ahead, and hopefully we'll have nice weather and this haziness will go away. I'm Deborah Davis, and I'm the Associate Commissioner for the Division of Fiscal Administration.
Great, thanks, Debbie. So I'm hopeful that additional folks will join. I'm grateful that we're recording, so this information is going to be available because this is our opportunity to talk with entities that receive dollars as part of the regional abatement for opioid settlement funds to go over what the reporting expectation is going to be for this year. Give a little insight into kind of like the timeline and the schedule we anticipate in subsequent years, and also to talk with you a little bit about what we were thinking in terms of the opioid settlement fund dashboard. That is one of the expectations on the part of OASAS to make information publicly available via a dashboard with regard to what's happening with opioid settlement. So please do feel free to raise your hand with questions throughout or drop questions in the chat as we go along. This is a dialogue, not me just talking for 45 minutes about what's happening. So please, again, feel free to participate in the conversation. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. We do have a very brief PowerPoint that we're going to use this afternoon. Let me bring that up. I apparently have to click share a few times here to make it work. There we go. All right. All right, so with regard to the regional abatement reporting, we have, actually, I'll wait, I'll build some suspense here. So we have had a couple of conversations already about the rollout of the regional abatement. I had told everyone that we were going to be sure to keep reporting to as low threshold as possible. That we were still trying to understand and flesh out what the reporting requirements entail from the statute perspective, from the settlement perspective. And two, one of the things that I know folks have asked about and talked about is with regard to not only the dollars that have filtered through OASAS as part of the regional abatement, but also the dollars that have gone directly to counties through the Attorney General's office. So for all of that, I have said that this is you know, a wheel in motion. We're figuring out things as we go along, that this is a collaborative team effort amongst all of us, and you know, we're going to do the best we can as we're trying to figure things out and try to spend the money, right, as effectively as possible. So everyone already has a more than full plate. We don't want to add any more to that than we have to. I've given you guys my word on that, and talked with, you know, folks here at OASAS, so we're committed to that. So what are we talking about for this year and also subsequent years? I had said that the reporting for this year likely will look different, somewhat different than what we will see in subsequent years, because we're only just starting, right? And there's only so much that's happened in the last 6 months or so. I also, you know, have shared with you that part of the settlement agreements call for reporting from recipients of funds to OASAS by August 1st each year. So in trying to figure out a timeline that is in keeping with what's required, that would allow us to report out on expenditures for the November 1st deadline that we have for issuing a report in collaboration with the board, you know, keeping all of these dates in mind, and also, again, trying to minimize the administrative burden of managing these dollars and reporting out on these dollars. Here's our proposal. So for this year, we do need some reporting from you due by August 1st that can speak to the use of these dollars. Realistically, we completely understand that some of you may still be in a procurement process in terms of making dollars available. You may even still be in a planning phase. So with that being the case, we are going to ask you to report out on dollars, and in the slide it says dollars spent. Really, we're talking about dollars procured, dollars encumbered, dollars under contract, right? So we're not saying that the dollars actually had to be spent and that you received, you know, a voucher for that. We're saying that as long as the dollars have been encumbered, that's how we're defining use of dollars. So we will ask for you to report back to us by August 1st on any dollars spent through June 30th of 2023. Again, recognizing that the numbers may be relatively low because you haven't had a lot of time to act. This is only for this year that we're doing this because, again, in trying to make things more streamlined, we want to get on a schedule so that you're reporting out to us on an annual basis and based hopefully in sync with your fiscal cycle. So this will be the only time that you will be reporting by August 1st. Come 2024, what we would like to do is ask that you report out to us by the end of March. So the end of March 2024, you would be reporting out to us on dollars encumbered, procured through 2023. So we're trying to move on to that annual cycle of reporting. So we will provide you with a link to report out on. You will have a month to complete that reporting come the spring, and assuming you provide that report, that is the information we need, and that's the information we will base our 2023 reporting on when we submit our report in 2024. I know I'm throwing a lot of dates around here. I hope that folks are following along. So for the most immediate purposes, reporting requirements. By the end of next week, so by July 7th, you are going to receive an email with a link to a reporting form like you did when you were first asked to submit to us your planned use of funds. It will be something that will come to you utilizing FormStack. It will look very similar, and we will show you what it does look like. It'll look very similar to what you had used previously to tell us what your planned spending was. Click on the link. We'd like you to indicate dollars that have been encumbered for each of the spending areas, each of those 10 priority areas identified by the board. And there's one additional question for this year's reporting. And that is with regard to the AG's office. I feel like I'm all over the place here, so I hope that this is clear as mud for everybody. So it's about the reporting timeline, but also in terms of the content of the report for this year. Yes, we want to know what dollars you've encumbered, and there is one additional question that we've included that speaks to the funding that was provided directly to counties by the Attorney General's office. Now, before anyone gets upset, right, because we talked about this and people had asked, what about those dollars coming through the Attorney General's office? Are we responsible for reporting on that? What's the expectation? We are trying to gain clarity around the amounts that were given to the counties and what is expected in terms of reporting. So for the time being, what we decided to do was include an open-ended question in this year's report that simply asks, tell us what you know about the use of the funds that were delivered directly from the Attorney General's office. It's very broad, it's open, and I want all of us to be clear that our expectation is not that you will be able to provide us with very much information in response to that question, because the dollars weren't necessarily sent to you as the LGU. They were sent to the county, and that could mean your fiscal officer. You know, each county has, you know, can have a different structure. So we recognize that you may not be in the loop in terms of how those dollars are used or what the county is putting those dollars towards, but because we want to be able to say that we have a reporting mechanism in place for collecting this information, we are including that question. Again, we recognize that with this first report, there may be a minimal amount of information that you're able to provide with regard to what we're asking you. There may not have been a lot of spending so far. We recognize that, so there might be zeros in those 10 categories. We also recognize that we're asking you about dollars that were provided by the Attorney General's office where you may not have any information and you may not be able to provide a status update, in which case, please just write in response to that question, unable to provide an update, no information available. So I don't, let's see here. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat or if there's any reaction to folks so far with what I am saying. I can't see the chat. Anything? Could my co-leaders assist me in answering that question? Have folks?
I think you're good to keep going.
Just keep going?
Yep.
Okay. So that is with regard to timelines. It gives you.
There is one
I
question.
will say there's something helpful in the chat that I was going to say. For consideration for the first report, it may be helpful to ask what agency or department is designated to oversee the AG funds for each county. Maybe we put that question in that second tab, you know, to try to capture that if the LGU knows that information, that would be helpful as well to collect.
We can certainly add that question. And again, I mean, if the LGU has that information or the reporting, you know, entity has that information, great. And if you don't, understood. So again, we want to get on an annual reporting cycle. And again, playing a little catch up in the this first year.
And I have a question. Can people see this? Actually, the screen went gray for me, and it might only be me. Can everyone else see the slide?
Yeah, there we go, Connie. Maybe try the share again.
Okay, hang on.
In presentation mode. It kind of put a big square over. And sorry, Sarah, I hadn't seen your question before I told Connie to keep moving.
Oh dear, I'm getting up.
And this is why we are having these meetings, and it's done in partnership because, you know, we get great ideas, just like that one.
So it's not sharing. Hang on. Give me one more second. There we go. All right. Okay. So just other things tied to reporting and the implications too in terms of our cycle, right, with the reporting and then also with additional payments, and then kind of thoughts for additional ways to understand use of dollars. I'll start with that first item in terms of small focus groups. So one thing, and internally here at OASAS, we're talking about, you know, how are we understanding the use of these funds and the impact of the funds, all the opioid settlement funds, those that we're making available through RFAs, that which is available through regional abatement, potentially that which is available through, you know, AG's office. So in thinking through how do we talk about the use of the dollars and the impact of the dollars, you know, we have lots of questions, but I really want to push us to a point where we are focused in on, maybe hyper-focused in on what is critical? What is it that we really need to know? Because I don't want to spend anyone's time collecting information or talking about this in a way that's not going to directly inform our reporting, our evaluation. So one of the things that is a potential opportunity would be to talk with you, and whether that be a small focus group that includes, you know, a handful of LGUs who are interested in talking about their procurement process and how this has unfolded. Certainly another option is utilizing this monthly meeting as an opportunity to talk to everyone and get input from folks in terms of the procurement process, your planning process, kind of how all of this has worked. But we will utilize opportunities like this to kind of ensure that we're in discussion and we're collecting information, we're hearing from you at points along the way in terms of the implementation and utilization of funds. I'd already mentioned that with regard to the Attorney General funding, or the funding that came through the Attorney General's office. This year, it's a single question. Actually, it'll be two questions now, right? Do you know who's managing or in receipt of those dollars? Two questions on the reporting form. With additional information, there may be an ask for additional information in subsequent years from you. We will maintain, you know, the discussion, and we will be talking about this and figuring out as we go, as I've said. So you will be part of those conversations when we talk about additional reporting related to the AG dollars. In terms of payments, so this year we had used the submission of your planned use of funds report as evidence of our working together on getting the dollars out, and that is what kind of triggered your eligibility to receive a payment. And so with that report, once we got that back from you, then the process began of our positioning ourselves to make a payment to the LGU. Going forward, and based on settlement language, statute language, we do need to collect from you reporting every year and an attestation that states that the dollars were used for abatement purposes. And so, again...
And did not supplant.
And did not supplant, thank you. So again, for this year, the submission of your report by August 1st, and the form stack does include the attestation, by the way, so you can sign off and do everything all at once. That will render you eligible for your 2024 payment. So know that once we get the report, then project management can say to, you know, Debbie's team, we've gotten the reporting in, we can then move towards issuing a payment. However, I want to be sure that everyone understands that this is not an OASAS only activity in terms of making, you know, getting all the wheels in motion to make this payment happen. Know that we have not yet gotten the exact dollar amounts for the 2024 appropriations. I expect there will be some information shared at the next Opioid Settlement Fund Advisory Board meeting about the regional abatement funding for 2024. And it is from that point that we will get more detailed information from DOB that will enable us to do our calculations, because remember, the dollars are allocated regionally, and OASAS used our discretion to come up with a formula to then calculate how much money would be available to each county. And so we will have to go through our calculations, identify the dollar amount eligible or available for each county and other litigating entities in the 5 cities. We will issue notification to you that this is the dollar amount that you will be receiving, and then we'll go through the process of the dollars being available in our system and then the payment being issued. I'm totally talking as if I'm trying to channel my Debbie Davis, but I'm going to stop here and ask Debbie if she wants to clarify or add to anything I just said.
No. I mean, you did a great job, Connie, channeling the Debbie Davis. No, essentially everyone, you know, we have an appropriation of $212 million. The portion at which that goes out to the counties is being finalized because we had a few settlements come in during last year. And so those need to be, just crunched out and discussed between the Attorney General and the Division of Budget. So once that it gets all worked out, like Connie said, the regional shares will then go through OASAS's formula, and then we'll be able to, notify the local government units on what those amounts are. We have your report, but then we have to get all the those amounts divvied up, the 55 different amounts put into the statewide financial system and so forth. So it'll take, a few months. So probably if your reports are in by August, you'll start to receive some payments maybe by the end of September. But obviously we're having these meetings, so we will keep you in the loop and let you know all those wonderful, payment process information. But it'll be timely, certainly. But we're looking forward to the August 1st timeframe to just get that first reporting under our belt, and then we'll get the next payment process communicated and get that under our belt.
Awesome. Okay, terrific. All right. Okay, so I know that there are a couple of questions coming into the chat. Emma, we will post these slides in the regional abatement section of our opioid settlement fund initiatives section on the OASAS webpage. So we will make these available. There's a question with regard to spending plans. Will they be required each year in order to get the funding? And that's an excellent question, and it's one that we were contemplating very recently. From our perspective, it's really understanding and knowing how the dollars were used. So we are focusing on you providing us information on an annual basis in terms of how you actually utilized the funding. We recognize that spending plans can change. Two, it can be challenging if we were to ask you for a spending plan for 2024 when there's the question of carryover from 2023 that you're going to be contending with. The dollar amount for 2024 and so on. So we are going to leave the planning to you. We are only going to be asking you to report out on actual use of funds and the programs that are executed. Debbie.
Yeah, I'm going to add something to that. Connie and I talk often, and it's usually about opioid settlement funds in one way, shape, or another. But one thing that just came to mind, Connie, that we haven't chatted about a little bit, but I think is important to mention is just highlighting the important part about how these funds are used. Also, please keep in mind that there will be an audit process. Mm-hmm. There will be audits happening randomly throughout the year to check on the use of these funds and check on your backup to being able to show that you didn't supplant, and that you were actually using this money to supplement what you were already doing, so that you weren't trying to create a savings by using these dollars. So you're going to have clear, records to say, nope, this was in addition to anything else I've ever spent, and, that it was for an allowable purpose. So, that is more important. Knowing how you spent the funds and being able to show upon audit is the most important part of the use of these funds. So we thought, right, rather than go through the formality of having you submit a planned use of funds, it was more important for you to spend time really tracking and planning on your own for these use and being able to submit that information to us or provide it upon audit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay, so one other thing that I wanted to mention, and we won't get into a lot of detail here, but again, for awareness and for future discussion, I had said, I just talked about what the reporting is going to be for this year. Know that, how we understand the use of funds is evolving. We are figuring that out and thinking through what's collecting information about the use of funds. So we are discussing internally, and actually, Ashley Jordan, who is our Director of Research and Evaluation here at OASAS, wanted to at least kind of, throw some ideas out there, and this is some of what we're talking about. And, it's a question of understanding the use of funds, perhaps from an administrative perspective, and then also, looking at and understanding the use of funds by potential domains like priority populations, or, even in terms of some of the high priority areas of that have been identified for use of funds. So what you see on the screen is just, some quick thoughts in terms of what would be helpful to know. And these are under consideration. These are for discussion with all of you. But from an administrative perspective, is it, what's most important to know? How funds were used by zip code, knowing that we have, other data that we take into consideration when, understanding the severity of the epidemic in, throughout parts of the state and, of course, across the country. Looking at how those dollars are spent within, pinpoint areas based on zip code. Is it about not understanding and knowing how many RFAs entities released with the use of the funds? How much interest there was in applying for those dollars that you made available? And then two, once those funds are released, how many programs did we fund? Where are those programs located? So again, these are examples of data elements that we could potentially look at. I'm very interested in hearing from you in terms of how you're understanding or assessing your use of funds. What at the county level is important? Or, what data are you looking at in terms of understanding the impact of the dollars? So moving on in terms of those specific domains, as I said, we could potentially try to account for, the percentage of a priority population that's served, in terms of the number of programs, the dollars, location of the where the funding was utilized based on priority populations. We know that the accessibility, availability, delivery of medication for opioid use disorder is very important and a high priority in making sure that everyone has access to all medications and can make an informed decision if interested in pursuing treatment medication for to treat their addiction. So around that concept, around that idea, is it about knowing how many programs are providing medication, or how programs have changed in the menu of medication they can offer, and how did the funding direct that or influence that? So just some ideas here. We will, and hopefully, Ashley, it's okay with you that, I put this in here. I didn't give you a heads up that I was going to put it in here, but it really is for, to spur discussion and thought about how we should do this. And, we'll make the slides available so you can look back at this. And again, this was like, some immediate brainstorming to just get the conversation going and to get us thinking about how to conduct this evaluation with you. In terms of this reporting, I did mention that we are using FormStack again. We will continue to use FormStack going forward for this data collection. I would ask if Andrew Heck, if you don't mind, sharing your screen to show everyone what the report form looks like right now, and it should be shockingly familiar to all of you because we really worked off of the previous iteration of the report that we had built and used. So thank you, Andrew, for bringing that up.
So do you want me to walk through it, or?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So like Connie said, this is going to look familiar to everyone because I think everyone on this call to get your initial allocation had to do something very, very similar. So we'll have all seen essentially a very close version of this. So first, obviously, it's going to ask you for some contact information. I'll just fill it in as me real quick. Which again, you've seen before. And then it's going to ask you to select which LGU you're filling it out for. I'll just pick one. And then you'll confirm, again, because you're picking here, we just want to make sure that you look at that and say, oh, I've picked the right one. Once it asks you pick the right one, again, it's a little bit what Connie's covered today, emphasizing that we're asking about amounts spent, but also, or encumbered, but acknowledging the fact that could be zero. And in a lot of cases, it probably will be. But the idea here is we're trying to collect as much information as is available. So you'll see, just like you did before, you'll see the total amount your county is receiving, and there'll be a calculation after you allocate it, how much is spent. The difference is before we asked that you allocate all the funds, so you guess sort of where each one is going. Here, these calculations are just sort of for your own purposes, just so you can see how much is unspent. It's not going to stop you from submitting it if you have, if you say, if you do 50,000 for harm reduction and you haven't spent anything else, you'll see how much you've spent, how much is remaining, and say you do 25,000 for research. You'll see how much is spent, how much is remaining. But again, that's not going to stop you from submitting the form. If this is all you've spent, you just hit next. This is the AG question, so ask first if you know which department is designated to oversee the funds. We just added that question now as it came up. And then separately you ask, like, okay, if you know what's being done with them, can you tell us a little bit about it? So then we meet our obligation of asking how those funds are being spent. You'll get the attestation, you'll sign it. If the person signing that attestation is the same as the person who filled out the first part, you check here, and all that first part from the beginning will fill itself in. If it's not, then put your name. If for some reason the person signing the attestation is different from the person who filled out section 1, make sure that you put that here and it matches the signature, and then you'd hit next. And then again, this is just one more final confirmation to make sure that you are picking the correct LGU, and then you would hit submit. I'm not going to hit submit on this one, but that's it. So I did it here very quickly. You may be able to do it just as quickly, depending on how much money has been spent.
Thanks, Andrew. So again, in keeping with wanting it to be straightforward, there you go. And two, I don't know, I think I'm going to try to find an enjoyable point about all this work that we're all doing, that it's a work in progress. And I'm saying that because Debbie pointed out, and I appreciate it, the fact that we do need to go back to statute and settlement to see if there, to clarify language in terms of actual expenditure. So I had said when we talk about dollars spent, I was talking in terms of procurement or encumbered. We have to look back at the language to see if it says explicitly spent, right? So are we asking you to report out on and attest that these dollars have been spent and in keeping with the settlement agreements? So we will get clarification on that and how we are defining spent, what value we're asking you to report out on, how we define that. We will clarify, and there will be language in the form stack so that it's explicitly clear what we are talking about. So I may need to correct my step there, but we will do that to be sure that we're clear. And I mean, it's an important thing, right? We all need to be understanding and defining things in the same way so we're getting accurate information from everybody. So we will clarify that point. Thank you, Debbie. Any comments, questions, concerns so far? Did I ever tell you guys that I have a knack of scheduling important meetings on the Friday before like a long weekend or a holiday weekend? I was renowned for that on one project in particular that I did a few years ago. And what was beautiful was that people still showed up. So they still, I was in the New York City office, they still showed up, and we still had those meetings that ran until after 4 on Fridays, despite the upcoming holiday weekend. So I think I've done it here as well. So thank you to the folks who were able to join today. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that we are charged with making information available through a public-facing dashboard with regard to opioid settlement. And so, again, in conversation, we're trying to determine what is the information and what would be most useful, most helpful to folks. We're talking about all of these different funding streams, and so a work in progress. However, we are very excited because OASAS is moving to establish a public-facing Tableau dashboard, which will be on our data landing page and likely cross-referenced with our opioid settlement fund page. But we do need to make information available through a dashboard. And so, again, wanting to make that point known that we need to do this, and wanting to have a dialogue with counties and those who are receiving regional abatement about what that looks like. So what is that information that we're putting on that public-facing dashboard? And of course, this information is publicly available, so it's not like we're, there's nothing super, special about what the information is, but it's more about just making it publicly available. So our team did, and to just show you an example of what this could potentially look like, the team here did put together some information, and I'm not sharing, am I? You'd think I'd be more adept at this point with this, but I am not. Okay, tell me I am sharing. Are we seeing the county regional abatement funds slide?
Yep, looks good.
Yes. Okay, so here's an example of where the team here in DMRP is able to take the information that you provided with regard to planned spending and through the magic of Tableau and all that they do, are able to create this what would be a public-facing view of information around the spending categories. So among the allowable spending categories, what you said, what you planned in terms of how much money in each of those areas. So this is an example. I just wanted you guys to get eyes on something to kind of so you'd understand the concept and what we're thinking of doing, and wanted your input in terms of what information you think would be helpful to the general public to have and to see in terms of what's happening with the regional abatement. So this is one possibility, and then, we have the ability to display information in a number of different ways. Here is, same information as a pie chart, and it would give folks a sense of the regional abatement dollars. This is how, across the state, the dollars fell into each of these categories. Again, just an example, but very interested in feedback from all of you in terms of how we can make this look and what this could look like. Going forward, I could see where we could potentially, present, annually what were the dollars actually spent in each of these categories. And again, on an annual basis. So just to be super clear, we're talking about aggregated information. We're not talking about listing saying, X county, this is what X county did with their money, and these are the dollars. That's not the level we're talking about here. This would be very high level. It would be aggregated information. So interested in what folks think about that, or ideas that you may have in terms of how we report out. again, this is a work in progress, right? And this is something that, you know, we're building towards. So interested in questions, comments, thoughts. I think Debbie Davis has one.
I have one too, in that since we're showing the data like that, and just previously had talked about sort of just really clarifying what is the data that we're going to ask for, whether it be encumbrances or expenditures, and how would you define expenditures? Is it truly disbursements out the door, you know, kind of thing? And I think, you know, when we talk about presenting a dashboard that kind of shows this information, which is really cool and very interesting, especially when you start getting, you know, the statewide look and then versus regional look, and really taking a look at how these dollars are being spent, and then even better, what are the outcomes for these expenditures. I'm wondering, and I'd love feedback too, you know, when we're first getting started, this is like overwhelming. There's a lot of money coming, and you're really looking at how to best use these dollars, and it takes a little while for that to happen. And you would want to be able to present to say, geez, if I'm only reporting on just the money that actually left and was spent, then it might look like I'm not doing anything. So one idea could be, you could talk in terms of reporting on what you've encumbered, which is what, you know, what are you setting aside in your system, your financial systems to be spent, you know, as you contract, and then also report on what you actually, you know, spent out the door. So, you know, there is a chance we could put spaces to capture both, because at first it'll be all kind of caught up in encumbrances, and it won't be money out the door. So just something to think about. I mean, we don't want it to make it hard, so maybe we just pick one thing, but you know, it just made me think about there could be reasons to collect, you know, that both.
Okay, no, that's a good point. And then too, I mean, it could be, and you know, that maybe we want to be able to talk about, you know, the efforts around naloxone, right? Naloxone saturation is an important effort. SAMHSA, you know, provides us with our state opioid response dollars, but certainly the opioid settlement fund dollars, you know, many are using that to make more naloxone available, right, in their communities through different mechanisms. So if that were a shared effort, then, you know, maybe that would be something we would want to talk about, and like how much money are we through the regional abatement putting into that effort, and kind of what does the disbursement look like. So there are many different ways we can think about it, and I hope that everybody spends their long weekend thinking about the opioid settlement fund evaluation and how you think we can best represent our use of dollars over the next 16 years. And see a noticeable impact, you know, when all is said and done. But all kidding aside, this is going to be the topic of conversation. We do, you know, we have these monthly meetings scheduled. I'd like to have our conversation in July and August on this, and certainly we will have more suggestions, more ideas that we can bring to the table and discuss. And two, I don't want anyone to hesitate in reaching out, you know, directly to me to discuss or to bring ideas to the table in terms of the evaluation. I'm very interested to hear how counties are planning to look at the use of funds. So other comments, questions, thoughts? I'm going to ask to the team that I work with. Did I miss anything given our discussion of this meeting today and what we wanted to cover? Debbie.
I was trying to find a thumbs up, and I hit the high five.
Well, yeah. Oh, okay. High five, sister. I got you. All right. So certainly, please, you know, for the LGUs who are on, please, you know, share this information with your fellow LGUs, with your colleagues. Again, we will post this recording on the webpage, and we will have ongoing dialogue about the reporting. Just want to reiterate that we will be sending the link for the 2023 reporting through June. That will be sent out to folks by the end of next week. And certainly Lucia Clark and her team will be following up to ensure that we get reporting from everyone And again, that is what kind of qualifies or readies us to go through the process for issuing your 2024 payment. Any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Opioid Settlement Fund, the OSF Project Management mailbox. That's OSF Project Management at oasis.ny.gov. Thanks for joining this afternoon. I'm sure that there are other places that we would all rather be right now, but here we are getting it done and doing the work. So please enjoy your weekend, wear your mask, take care. Talk to you really soon. Bye, everybody.